Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Getz. I am the Senior Director for the UVA Clubs Global Network in the Office of Engagement at the University of Virginia. And I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's installment of Behind the Scenes, where we get to learn the fascinating stories and incredible talents of members of our UVA community. And I am joined tonight by Lindsay Huff. Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for joining us. I've been referring to you as artist and alumna Lindsay Huff. We're really excited to have an opportunity to dialogue with you a bit more about what that looks like. So literally what that looks like. So thanks for making time for this. And this is going to be a conversation between myself and Lindsay, but audience, it's a conversation with you as well. So we invite you to submit your questions. You'll notice at the bottom of your webinar box that there is a Q&A option. If you have a question as we go through tonight's program, please submit it in the Q&A, and I will be very happy to send it to Lindsay at a moment that makes sense. So thanks so much, and we'd love to get as many questions in as possible, so please feel free to go ahead and to submit those. So Lindsay, you are a class of 21 graduate, is that correct?
Yes.
And from the architecture school?
From the architecture school. Mm-hmm.
And you are a Virginian?
Yes, I am. I'm from Ruckersville, Virginia. So some might say I'm a Charlottesville local from just
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly. Well, fantastic. Well, as many of you know, Lindsay has an incredible art career, and it has taken on a very interesting manifestation that we are going to learn about and be able to get a glimpse of in real time, which is awesome. But to tell you some of the background of her artistry, we're going to turn it over to her and hear a little bit and also see some of the progression of her artwork over the years. So Lindsay, we're looking forward to seeing some of that and to hearing some of your background and your story. And audience, remember, submit questions in the Q&A box whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate the intro. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this evening, and I'm very thankful to UVA Clubs for letting me use their platform. And I love talking about art, so I'm very excited for the presentation part. But I'm going to keep that brief because I'm even more excited about the demonstration I'm going to do, just kind of showing my process. So I want to start off by just talking about kind of how my journey began. The painting to the left is where I come from. It was taken in Ruckersville, and this is one of the first acrylic paintings that I added to my portfolio. This I created in high school. I took 2 years of AP art in high school, and that's really where I developed my love for art and built my portfolio. And then the little display to the right was one of my first art displays showcasing some of the work that I did in high school as well. And then on the next slide, this shows one of my first studio spaces. I spent my summers in between high school years and college years doing a lot of commissioned artwork, kind of continuing to build my portfolio. So this is one of the first commissioned pieces that I did. This one's very unique. It was for a friend, and it's acrylic paint on like a wooden board that's then being hung in his house. So yeah, this kind of shows how messy my space can get too, and how informal my studio space is. But that's how I like it. I move around a lot. And I've had many different studios over the past few years. So this just shows one of my first ones. And maybe some of the supplies I'm using if you're curious about that. And this is before I got into shoe painting. So this is really where I developed my, I guess you could call it 2D portfolio, mainly like acrylic paintings and watercolor paintings, but a little bit of everything too. Some graphite, pen and ink, all kinds of stuff. So yeah.
Lindsay, this is beautiful. So how old were you when you had that first commission then?
I believe I was 19 years old.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think I had a couple before that, but that was one of the first that I documented that I was like really proud of. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So now I'll talk a little bit about my time at the University of Virginia. Like Michael said, I graduated in 2021, with a Bachelor of Science in Architecture. And I really, really enjoyed my time in the architecture school. I was able to develop a different kind of portfolio, still bringing in elements of my art classes and just kind of what I learned over the years in building a portfolio. Obviously looked a little different. I'm, working on these large scale buildings. This is an example of a project that I completed my fourth year. So this was fall of 2020. So I really got into the detail of this project. I designed almost like an installation in a museum like space in New York City. And so this was fun. I was able to incorporate my own hand drawings in it as well. The drawing on the bottom just shows some of the objects that are going to be hypothetically on display in this space that I designed. So that was fun. And then on the next slide is my senior thesis project. So this I also completed my fourth year the spring semester. This one I very much enjoyed because I was able to incorporate colors and I love working with color, as you'll see with a lot of my shoe designs and just my art in general. So I focused on mainly a colorful interior in this particular project. I designed a free clinic actually for my hometown. So this is all hypothetical, but I was able to kind of bring in elements of the surrounding landscape and the roof structure. So working a lot technically, structurally, and also colorfully, as you could say. And I was able to do a lot of research on how color affects people's moods and is actually used as like a healing tool here. So that was very fascinating.
It's funny that you say that because I was thinking that these drawings are both technical and colorful and beautiful. And that makes sense for an architecture drawing, but it prompted me to think, did you always want to be an architect or to study architecture, or what did that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a bit of an interesting story. When I was little, I thought I was going to be an artist for a little bit of time. And then at one point I was like, well, I don't really know. And then in high school, I took an engineering class through UVA and I loved it. So I was like, maybe I'll take a step back and think about this engineering aspect or this engineering possibility. And so I thought about it some more, did a little bit of research, and realized that architecture might be a great way to combine like my love for art and engineering. And sure enough, it was. And one day I would love to work in interior design. I think that would be so, so cool. Where I'm still working with color, still possibly working with artists. Maybe I'll be an interior decorator, but I love designing the interior of this building pictured and particularly. So yeah, that's kind of how that came to be. I realized that I didn't necessarily want to burn myself out with art classes through college and kind of keep that as like my summer job in a way. And I think that was great because I was still able to enjoy what I was doing without having to feel like I had to do it all the time, if that makes sense. So yes, that's a little bit about my architecture major and kind of that transition from maybe art to studying architecture and then back to art, as we'll see shortly. So this is my most recent art display. And this one was so exciting because I was asked to display at the UVA McIntyre School building on the South Lawn. So this was in fall of 2020, so I was still in school. And I was able to display a lot of my paintings. Most of these I completed in high school, some of them like in the summers between high school and college, or my college semesters. But yeah, this was so fun, and I was honored to be able to display at my current college. So this was for that fall semester, so they're not there anymore, but you actually might be able to see the bird picture that's in the middle of the bottom picture on this slide. That's one of my favorites from high school, and so that is currently under ownership of McIntyre School. So you might be able to see that if you stop by.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
These are beautiful. And also, is it, I would imagine as a non-artist, is it so exciting to do a display of your works? What does it feel like to prepare this for, a display at your school?
Oh yeah, it was so cool. I had a lot of preparations to do because I had to put mats on all of them, figure out kind of what would look good next to each other. And so that was fun to plan out because I was able to kind of use my love for interior design and kind of use that architecture brain a little bit, maybe more on like the interior decorating side. And I loved that. So I hope to be able to do more displays now. Um, yeah, maybe when I have a more permanent studio or a more permanent home, because I do currently move around a lot. It's tough to be able to get involved with that, and then I have to like ship artwork out and all that. But one day, I hope I can do something like this again.
Amazing.
Okay, so now we're getting into the shoes. I love this slide because it reminds me of just how I got started. This was taken, I believe, in September of 2021. So a few months after I graduated, I was trying to figure out, okay, well, if my husband and I are going to be moving around a lot, like kind of what could I maybe do that allows me to still have my passions in art and even architecture, but allows me to be flexible. I loved, for a while, I had loved the idea of starting my own business. So actually in June of 2021, I started up a website, which I will have all the information for that at the end. If you want to visit, it has more of my portfolio on it. More about like my art journey, and I have a shop up there as well. So I started all that in June, and then a couple months later, I was like, well, how can I expand this? Because I think this will be fun, but I want to do something a little more fun, a little more exciting. So my husband Jay, some of you might know him, he suggested that, actually he had suggested this a while ago, not necessarily as like a business, but just to kind of try out painting shoe designs. He's a big shoe guy. I was less of a shoe girl, but of course over the past couple of years, like I've become more of a shoe girl. And so he had these Air Jordans, and he said, hey, how about you just try out a design on these? Like, no rush. This was actually, I think, over a year before I actually got started with this as a business. So they were kind of like sitting in his closet for a while. And then after I graduated, I was like, okay, I'm gonna break these out and I'm just gonna go for it because I thought about it, thought it might be fun. I started by doing a little bit of research, and honestly, it didn't take much. I think for me, it's a lot of like trial and error. This was my first pair of shoes that I did, and it was really fun. I was honestly amazed at like how well the paint colors turned out. I wasn't really sure how that was going to be. Obviously, like they weren't perfect. I made a couple errors, but it was just fun to kind of experiment with these, and I think they turned out okay. I had to actually recently touch some of them up because I didn't put the top coat on right. So some of them, some of the paint kind of flaked off a little bit, but that doesn't happen if you lay the top coat down right. So it was definitely a learning process. So my husband is the model in this picture, and I definitely wanted to show this one because it shows the beginning of that process.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So this is the very first pair that you made as in this art.
Yes, very first pair. Yeah.
That's incredible. And your husband is the model here. Yeah, I was going to ask what he did.
He models for me full time. No.
Yeah, I like it. Your husband, the model. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thankfully, I mean, he did play a big role in how I got started with this. So thanks to
That's
him
awesome.
for that. He's a continuous supporter and encourager of what I do. So. Yeah.
And these are so vivid. And when the image came up, I thought, gosh, they almost look like a comic book or like a fun, like, something like along those lines. So vivid and exciting. And that is really incredible. I mean, what a unique and amazing thing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was really fun. The comic book style was the goal. I think since then I've developed more of my own style, which I'll obviously get into a little more, versus just kind of someone else's like comic book style. But yeah, still, I think that was a great addition to my portfolio.
Great.
So here is a glimpse into my very first, I want to call it an official art studio, but I've realized that there's no such thing as an official art studio. This is just a space that I rented when I was in Los Angeles last year. And I loved this space. It was just so creative. I was surrounded by lots of other creative minds that did everything from like sculpture to collaging to all kinds of 2D and 3D art. So that was just so fun to be in that environment. And this is just a little picture of what my studio space looked like before I got everything set up, kind of before I even introduced like my first pair of shoes to the studio. I think this is the one on the left was taken like right after I signed the lease. I was just really excited to get in there and get all my paint set up. So that's what that one is. And then the picture to the right is kind of my first step in the shoe painting process, both sketching out the design. Now I've transferred my kind of prototype drawings to the iPad, but I started by hand drawing and then just showing a blank pair of shoes and kind of where I start. So the next slide shows some more pictures from the studio and more about my shoe painting process. So kind of off to the left is some of my first layers of paint in the background colors, and then I get into a little more detail. Picture to far right is a different pair of shoes, but kind of showing how I maybe prop them up for some photos. I always like to take photos of my work too for my portfolio and for my website. And then the boxes of shoes in the middle. I love this picture because I have my customers send me their shoes that they want me to work with. And so sometimes I have like stacks of boxes in my studio space. I just think that's so fun and so exciting. It gets me just really excited about the projects coming up.
You know, as you talk about the layers and the way that you do this, and of course we'll talk more about this in the studio portion, but it just makes me remember that art isn't just, you know, you take something and you do some painting, and it's the thought and all the planning and envisioning your dream for it, right? And it's a lot of work in that sense, but with like the passion behind it to make this beautiful creation.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot that goes into it, so I'm excited to continue sharing about that.
Wonderful.
This is another picture from my studio space. This gives you a glimpse of kind of what maybe the behind the scenes are of my website and my shop and kind of how I operate. So I sell note cards with prints of my paintings on them. And that's been really fun. It's not, I wouldn't call it the main part of my business. I would say commissions for sure are, but I love having like these little other things that people can have and can use that have my art on them. So I've been wanting to create note cards for years with my paintings on them. And so this kind of shows an unboxing of those. And yeah, I can feel my excitement behind that picture for sure. I always love getting those in the mail and then sending them out.
I love those too. And even though it's such a digital age, there's something so wonderful about getting a note card, and in particular one with art as beautiful as yours. That's incredible. Can I ask, are those your feet and shoes or
yes.
in that picture?
Yeah. Trying to get like that bird's eye view.
Yeah. It's perfect the way it looks.
Yeah, have my table easel on there and everything. So yeah. And then this picture shows kind of how I got into oil painting. This was a pretty recent development. I had been wanting to do this for years and kind of dipped my toe in the oil painting world, I guess you could say, a little bit in high school. But I was excited to get back into it when I was commissioned to do an oil painting this past June. So this is kind of showing a bit about my practice process and how I kind of experimented with colors on scraps of canvas. So that was really fun. And then the next slide shows the almost finished product of the oil painting that I completed back in June. And this is also the largest painting that I've done. It is 4 feet by 7 feet. So I don't know if the picture really
oh my goodness,
that scale.
Wow.
I feel like I kind of have to tell everyone that. So I was thankfully gifted this easel that I was able to use, because otherwise I don't know how I would have completed this painting. My back would have really hurt from bending over so much.
Yeah.
So for this one, I usually sit down and work, but for this one I stood for most of it and worked, sat down for the little details, but that was so fun. Yeah, this painting is currently hanging in Gallison Hall in Farmington, Virginia, so just outside of Charlottesville.
Incredible. That's beautiful. What a beautiful work.
And then the next slide.
Oh,
Yeah, my heart is a little heavy looking at this slide. Some of you may know that I was commissioned to do some shoes for the UVA football team for their media day this past July. I was honored and blessed to have been asked to do this, and it really was just an incredible project, and a big part of my portfolio. And I think a lot of, well, first of all, this project is really special given the events that happened a few weeks ago, but also it just was a great way, I think, for me to develop my portfolio a bit more, and kind of branch out a little bit. I was able to even work with some of the players and the coaches about like what they wanted on their shoes. I was able to learn some more about them as people versus just as players from watching them on TV, or listening to interviews and things like that. So that was a really, really awesome part of this process. I also traveled a lot while I was working on these. So I literally packed all 5 of these shoe boxes in a suitcase, and because I was traveling a lot over the summer, and took them to various cities, including like San Francisco and LA, and was working out of kind of my own makeshift studio spaces, I guess is what you can call it. So yeah, it was just really a great project, and I was blessed to have gotten a lot of commissions from this as well. So I've been recently very busy with commissions from people who maybe saw these shoes or heard about them. So that's been really, really fun.
that's amazing. And thanks for sharing that. And
Yeah,
we agree with you. Our hearts are heavy too, as we continue to remember Lavelle and Devin and Deshaun. And it's an incredible part of your story and a hard part of your story, and also an incredible part of your story. And many of you may have read the UVA Today article after the ACC kickoff. And Lindsay, I have to say, this idea of you getting to know the players and also incorporating that into the work is really incredible. And I think also just seems very UVA to me, very like, really being in it together. So thanks for that, sharing that as well.
yeah, of course. And this pair of shoes I did shortly after the UVA football shoes. This is my last project of the summer before I moved out to LA. And this, I love this project because, well, first of all, I have not shared this one on my website or social media or anything like that. So a lot of people haven't seen these. Obviously, there's kind of like a UVA theme going on. These are for a UVA econ professor. And so his wife actually commissioned me to do these shoes, and I just loved it because I love whenever I can do a pair of shoes that where that UVA connection is there. So I work a lot in orange and blue, that's for sure. I keep having to reorder these orange paints and these blue paints because lots of people want those colors, and I think that's awesome.
So wait a minute, this is incredible. So now it's been a while since I've taken econ, but that is the classic chart there, isn't it? And
I
then,
believe so. I also didn't take any econ classes. I was an architecture major, but I learned a lot about econ through doing these shoes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if prices don't, this is incredible. It's got the whole
don't
bit.
adjust, output must, I believe is what the rest of it says. Don't quote me on that, because again, I'm not an econ major.
And I love that you've got the sabers in the chart.
Yes, that was my favorite part of the design.
Also, what a cool professor to wear.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so this brings me back to my current studio space. That's my view from my current space, and that again shows a glimpse into kind of like the shoe prepping process. I have to unlace them first, and then I'll take off the top coat. And I believe that's the last slide. So I will, go ahead and.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And thanks. That's a great overview of your history with art, and sort of your story, where you come from. And before you head over to your studio, and we want to see what's coming there, I have a key question that I definitely have to ask, which is, why UVA? What brought you to UVA?
Yeah, I realized that I would have a lot of opportunities there. And I realized that I wanted to be a bit closer to home than some of the other schools that I looked at. And I heard only great things about UVA from friends from my high school who were there currently or had gone there. My aunt and uncle went there, and yeah, had just only heard great things. And it really is beautiful there. I had grown up just really familiar with the area, had been on several field trips there, and just fell in love with it. So yeah, and obviously, like, knowing I wanted to study architecture, once I did some research and looked into the architecture school there, I realized that would be a really great fit for me. So I was excited
Fantastic.
and be close to home.
We're so glad that you were there, and that with us, and that it was such a great experience. And hey, you met someone who became a shoe model for you. So
yeah, exactly. I did meet my husband there, so definitely thankful that I went.
Okay, well, a reminder to the audience, please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A box. And what we're going to do is allow Lindsay to kind of toggle over to her studio view. So you won't see our faces anymore, and instead the studio is going to come on. And Lindsay's done an incredible thing, which is that she's going to, it takes, I'll ask her about this in a minute, it takes her a while to do one pair of shoes, as you can imagine. So she's staged for us a little bit here so that we can see her process in a much more expedited fashion. So and why don't I just go ahead and start there. Lindsay, how long does it take you typically to do what you do?
Yeah, well, it really depends on the design that the customer is asking for. But it can really take anywhere from 15 to as many as 30 hours, depending on how detailed I want to go or how they want to go.
Wow.
So there are a lot of steps involved. So obviously we're not going to sit here for 15 hours. I'm not going to bore you guys with that. But what I have done is prepped these two shoes. So I'm going to basically show the 4 main stages of shoe painting.
Great.
So yeah, Michael, I don't know if you had anything else to add, or I can just go ahead and go into it.
Yeah, go ahead and get started. And then I'm going to throw in, there are a couple questions. I'll throw them in as we go along. Okay,
sounds good. So I'll kind of be working and talking. I'm going to try to do this as naturally as possible. This is also my first time doing like a live demonstration, so please, please bear with me.
Awesome, we're honored.
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be able to do this. So what I'll start by doing is, well, I've already unlaced the shoes. Obviously, that's the first step, especially if this part is being painted, which most of the time it is. Actually, all of my most recent designs have this part painted. I think that really adds a lot to the shoe. And then my final step is lacing the shoes back up. But what I have here is just a regular cotton round, and then a little bit of 100% acetone nail polish remover on it. There are different ways you can do this. This was the most convenient because I just went to my local drugstore and got some of that.
Yeah.
But there's also, I'll talk a lot about Angelus brand. That's the brand of paints that I use, and Top Coat, but they also have like a leather preparer and deglazer that I've also used that also works really well, but they basically have the same ingredients. So I'll start by, you have to take off the top coat that's on the shoes. There's already like a protective kind of waterproof coat on top, and this is for any like leather shoe that I'm working with. Most often I work with leather shoes. Occasionally I've worked with like fabric, or maybe even like a mesh shoe. Like someone sent me these Adidas sneakers one time, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try it. So I went for it, and I think they turned out pretty well. But most often I work with leather shoes. I think the paint just grips to that best.
And Lindsay, someone asked a question, is the base always white in order to allow you to paint the colors you want to paint?
It doesn't have to be. It really depends on the design. I've really only worked with white shoes, but I have watched videos and done some research on painting shoes that have color on them. And the paint that I use is pretty thick. As long as you do like a couple layers of paint, then it should show up just fine.
So, nice.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing you can see, there's a very UVA design.
Yeah.
Be fitting. I'm gonna actually go ahead and give you like a sneak preview of the finished sides. This is,
Beautiful.
I'll show the final step on this side of the shoe. So I kind of freestyled it a bit, but I don't know if you can see there's a little bit of UVA elements in here.
Yes, absolutely. Like in the lines along. That's amazing.
So I was trying to figure out maybe what I could do for this. It was a little abstract, little UVA, but very true to my style. So I think
I saw a V pennant. I see the saber.
Yeah.
Really awesome.
So now that I've prepped this side of the shoe, I'll go ahead and put down the first layer of the background colors. So when it's finished, when all the layers are down, it's going to look like this. Because the paint takes a little bit to dry, it's not as slow drying as, say, like oil paint or some other paints. It's still technically acrylic paint, which means it's water-based, and so it does dry fairly quickly, thankfully. So I'm able to work pretty quickly. But for the sake of this demonstration, I'll just put down the first coat, and then I'll flip to the other side where the first coat's already dried and put down the next coat. So I'll show you kind of what I'm working with. This is Angelus brand. This is the blue. I had to get a big bottle of the blue because, like I said, I use this color a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and pour. This is going to be a messy pour. Sometimes I like dip my paintbrush in it if I'm just getting like a small amount, or I'll even pour some into the cap. And this is just like a standard plastic palette. I didn't even clean the whole thing. I just gave myself enough space to kind of work for this video. So I'll go ahead and mix. I'll probably just do a section of the shoe. I usually actually always work in sections. So I'll paint the first coat, this little section, and then this one, and then the swoosh in here. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up my color. One of my favorite parts of the process is mixing the paints. I love, as I've said, working with color. So to make this kind of navy color, I'll do a majority of this blue. It's more of like a royal blue. And then I'll mix in some of this darker red and a little bit of this purple. And then
that's amazing.
This is so fun. I'll go ahead and put down the first layer of paint. Now these brushes I'm using, if you were to do this at home yourself, really any brush would work. I'm not picky when it comes to brushes, as long as the hairs aren't, as long as they're not so cheap that like the hairs are falling out. I try to get pretty fine bristled brushes. This brand is Winsor & Newton. That's a brand that I've used often over the years, especially with watercolor painting. These are technically watercolor brushes, but they'll work. So I'll have to kind of angle the shoe differently over the course of this video.
Yeah, so supplies wise, do you need a lot of custom things, or have you had a pretty easy run of it, of being able to find supplies in most stores?
I order most of my supplies from Amazon, actually.
Okay.
Amazon Prime, and that's great. It gets there in 2 days. Now I have a Michael's near me. I'm actually not sure if they have Angelus brand paints. Some of them do. I forgot to mention that I use these paints because they're a top-rated brand for specifically leather acrylic paint. So
interesting.
Don't use regular acrylic paint because it won't actually soak. I use the term soak into the leather. So if you want it to last a long time, make sure to get it doesn't have to be Angelus brand, but just some sort of acrylic paint that's meant for leather.
Yes, and we do want them to last a long time.
Yes, for sure.
So we had a question.
Especially if you're wearing them. Oh yeah, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, so we had a question come in saying, so how much design guidance does the customer provide you? Because you're also bringing your artistry to this, right? And you have a lot of skills and acumen, but also you're working with their vision. So what does that look like?
Great. That's a really good question. And I will say it really depends. I love using my own creativity to kind of come up with my own design. I will say that I use Procreate on the iPad I always do this, to kind of visualize the final product. And I try to, like, once that's finalized, I'll send it to the customer, and then I'll offer, to make any changes or just kind of get their input, because when I'm, being commissioned to do these things, I obviously want it to be what the customer wants. But most of the time, the customer will say, hey, here are a couple ideas, or here's just a general idea of what I want. And then I want you to kind of come up with a design, which I love because then, I have like a base for those iPad drawings. I have a little bit to work with, but it's not like I have to, I have all these guidelines where I'm just not able to be creative. And every step of this process is creative, or at least it's supposed to be. So I usually I give customers the option to be specific, and that's totally fine. Honestly, sometimes that's easier when they're just like, here's what I want specifically, like use this color and this color here. And that is totally fine. It actually saves me a little bit of time, which is great. I can go right into the design and I don't have to sometimes I'll look on Pinterest for inspiration, or just do like a simple, Google search or something like that, to kind of get an idea of which direction I'm headed in as far as making the design. So.
And what was the name of the tool that you mentioned again for your iPad?
It's called Procreate.
Okay.
It's just like a 2D drawing app, and they have tons of different features. It works kind of like Photoshop in a way, but you can also draw. I like to think of it as like a combination of all the like Adobe drawing suites, which I used a lot in my architecture classes. So
I was just thinking, as I watch you do this and you were talking about that program, I thought this is a little like those colorful architecture drawings, right? Where you sort of plan out how you're going to do it, and also think about your vision for it. I love it.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about what I'm doing now. As you can see I'll bring this one back over. I kind of did a fade of like a lighter blue into a darker blue. I like to fade the paint a lot in especially my most recent designs. I guess you could say that's kind of become like my signature style.
Nice.
I feel like it's unique and just adds a little bit of depth and dimension to the shoes. So I figured I would try to incorporate that into these as well. Now, as you can see, I'll bring it a little closer. You can still see a lot of the brush strokes, and that's because this is only the first layer. First of all, it needs to dry, and then I usually add to the background 3 or 4 layers of paint.
Oh, wow.
The paint is thick, but it's not thick enough, especially with the darker colors where you can kind of see the white shining through.
Yes.
You can really see my brush strokes, which I think is really unique. Part of me wants to just leave it like that, but I do think it looks crisper and cleaner when there are those multiple layers on it, and it's just kind of like one smooth gradation. So actually, I'm going to stop on this side. I'm going to let this dry for a little bit. And then
while you're doing that, I'm going to throw another question your way, which is, someone asked, how do you manage to stay within the lines of a shoe, and what do you do if you make a mistake?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I will say I make a lot of mistakes. Sometimes I try to work too quickly and I get ahead of myself. And then, my brush slips, and that happens on every single pair of shoes. Some artists I've heard or seen from watching like YouTube videos and tutorials and stuff, they'll actually put some tape down, which I have right here. This is just like painter's tape. And sometimes I will put that down, especially for this line right here, because it's so straight and so thin. So I'll just put like a long piece of tape like on the bottom and on the top, and then it actually ends up saving time. I can pretty quickly just sweep my brush across it, and then just when I'm done, when all the layers have dried, I just take the tape off.
Oh, fantastic.
And more often than not, it's a pretty straight line. So that's nice. But I will show you this other tool that I use when I do mess up. I have this eraser. And it doesn't look like an eraser. It looks like a dental tool. It has this tiny little end where I'm able to like get in the grooves of the shoe. So man, I should have, when I mess up, which will likely happen, I'll come back in when it's dry, and I will use this tool on it, and it actually, so it turns on and it spins really fast so that you can really get everything up. Because
That's amazing. It's like an eraser for you in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. So that is a very, very handy tool. So on this side of the shoes, I've already gotten the first layer down and it's dried. So that's the difference between this side and the last side. So I'll go ahead, I'll work on the fun swoosh this time. So I'm gonna go in with my blue and I'm gonna add the second layer, and I'm not gonna have enough time to wait for this to dry. So you can already tell if I hold it up a little bit, I've messed up right there. I've just got a little bit of paint on the outer edge.
Well, I want you to know that someone submitted not a question, but a comment saying, not mistakes, but design elements.
Ooh, there we go. I like that. That's what we'll call them from now on.
Advancing the creative process.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And sometimes, I mean, a lot of artists will say this, like they'll make mistakes, so they'll actually end up just not quote unquote fixing them and just
Okay, yeah.
them, and that becomes like a very unique part of the design, because it does sometimes, you know, the process can sometimes change the design. So now I'm adding a little bit of my orange paint. I'll kind of show how I do that fade on the swoosh. It's a little tricky because the paint, it's both a blessing and a curse that the paint dries when it does. So when you're doing a fade, you have to work pretty quickly before it dries so that all the colors can blend together and there's no like harsh transitions between them. So I've even added a little bit of red because that kind of helps with this color transition. Otherwise, it's just like a murky brown when you're kind of getting in the middle right here. So I turned, this is just a flat brush. You can use a round one too. I actually usually use a round in this case, but what I'm doing here is just flipping the brush around and using the thinner side to kind of blend a little bit.
Look at that. It's amazing. And it's incredible to think those details just make it such a rich color experience.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, we did have a question.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite or most unique custom pair of shoes that you have created?
Oh, that's a really good question. You know, I should have been prepared for that. Wow. I feel
And
like
if you need time to think about it, we can come back to it.
Yeah, I might actually have to come back to that because sometimes they run together, which is sad. But I feel like, at least lately, I've really been like cranking out these designs. I'm trying to figure out which ones I really found unique. I mean, obviously everyone is unique.
Sure. Well, while you're thinking about that one, here's a great question. Someone wrote in, I have a daughter in 5th grade who loves to draw. How can she get more involved in sort of fostering this, you know, art interest, learning about art outside of school, or just how did you, you know, continue to foster your own art interests as a young person?
Yeah, that's a really great question. When I was in 5th grade, I remember absolutely loving art. I actually took a couple art classes outside of school. I love my in school art classes, but when I took some classes outside of public school, that's when I would say really developed some of those basic skills that I was able to use when I got more into art in high school. So my advice would be, you don't necessarily have to take classes, but I would say just go for it. Like whether that's just opening up a coloring book or something. Like I still do coloring books. I'm 22 years old. I love them. I just think they're so fun. And yeah, maybe that's like, maybe she can get like a sketchbook and just go outside and start drawing what she sees. I think those are all things that I did that are great ways to kind of foster that love for art. And you don't have to get these fancy supplies. Like I wouldn't even say these are fancy supplies, but even just, a set of colored pencils and a notebook can do a lot for your art career. So I would say just start small and let it come naturally too. It doesn't have to be a class or something that you study in school.
Great advice. It's keeping up the practice, I guess, huh? And committing to that. And
definitely, for sure.
Now here's a couple for you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to explain a little bit more
Yeah,
about what
great.
I'm moving on to. So I've done my second layer on the Nike swoosh. I'll go ahead and add a second layer to this blue to kind of show you what that's going to look like. And then I'll move on to the other shoe. I'll let this one dry and kind of show you what it looks like when it's finished. But yes, continue with the questions. I'm ready whenever.
Well, and by the way, it's so fun to see the way that you have your color palette there and the way you work with the paints, mixing which ones are you're not mixing. It's so interesting. So the couple of quick questions are, do you sign your shoes in some way, quote unquote, as the artist? And also, do you ever paint the laces?
Ooh, I've never painted the laces. I have had customers, or even I've bought like different colored laces or different pattern laces, and those are fun to kind of experiment with. This particular paint won't work on laces. Now what I can do is I'll show you this solution. It's also Angela's brand. It's called Too Soft, and it's a fabric medium additive. So you can actually make your own. It's really fascinating. You can kind of make your own fabric paint with the solution. So you're supposed to add, I think it depends on the material, but more often than not, you add like one part this additive and then one part your leather acrylic paint. And when you mix it together, it kind of turns into a fabric paint, which I think is so cool. And so I wonder, I've never tried this, but I'm wondering if that would work maybe on the laces.
Yeah, perhaps that's an interesting question. But that can be another artist experiment for you.
Yeah, exactly. I always love art experiments.
Yeah, exactly.
There was another part to that question. Is that right?
Yeah. Do you sign your shoes? Not necessarily literally, but is there any little, artist mark or anything?
Yeah, definitely. Here, I'll actually, so I have the shoes right here. I'll show what my signature looks like. Now, these are these shoes that were
Oh, look at that.
So this was my first signature that I did. Now these are big shoes. So on the smaller shoes, when I don't want my signature to be that prominent or take up that much space, I'll just do an LKH in the same script.
Oh, that's great.
Usually use like a dark color on the inside of the shoe. So actually the side I'm working on now, how I would sign it is probably just an LKH, like right here under the swoosh. I like it to be subtle. Like I don't think it needs to be out there, but I do definitely want to sign my pieces.
Well, totally. And I think that, that speaks to the fact that we were talking about earlier. This is art, right? It's your creation and your creative process and your time on it. And I love that. And that's interesting as I think about it. You probably paint across a wide variety of sizes of shoes. Am I right?
Yes, that's for sure. I have painted some basketball player shoes. I've painted some, actually, I haven't done a pair of kids' shoes yet, but I have had some inquiries about those, and I'm definitely down to paint kids' shoes too. That's part of my my portfolio and what I would like to add to it. So yeah, a wide range for sure, and different styles of shoes too. I will say that these are the Nike Air Force One lows. I forgot to mention that. This is, I guess you could say, the canvas that I work in most often. These are the most highly requested style of shoes, but I'm definitely open to painting on like high top versions of these. I've done AF1 mids and highs, and you saw like a pair of Air Jordans. They don't even have to be Nike shoes. They can be really any white leather shoe or a fabric that, I've been able to do research about where I can actually, use my same techniques on and wouldn't have to alter my process too much. So like I said, I've worked on like Adidas sneakers before and yeah, different things like that. So
interesting. And another question that came in is a process question. Do you usually finish one shoe and then do the second, or do you paint in tandem?
Ooh, I usually paint in tandem because, so yeah, this is not exactly an accurate depiction of how my process works. Sure. Because what I do is I put all of the first layers of background paint down first after I've prepped both the shoes. And then as I'm waiting for like that, usually by the time that first section, I talk about how I work in sections, like if I did the section's first layer first, usually by the time I've done all the other sections first layers, this one's dry. So then I'll go back in, do my
I
second layer.
see.
And then, yeah, that's the beauty of this paint, is because it dries and kind of works with you, as I guess you could say. So that's a big plus.
Another question that came in, have you ever collaborated with other artists, or is this your own niche?
I actually have not collaborated with other artists now that I think about it, but I would definitely love to. I think that'd be so cool. Maybe that'll, look like another shoe artist. I am not close with any other shoe artists. But if one were to come about and say, hey, like, let's collaborate, I would definitely be open to it. I think that'd be so cool. Or even like if someone were to hand me like a 2D drawing and then I could like basically transfer it onto the shoes, I would also be open to that. So that would be very cool.
Yeah, it would be. And another question on along the lines of sort of like next possible steps. Do you think that you'll go into painting other accessories or other wardrobe things, or is it shoes?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I love that question. I've gotten that a couple times. I have a friend who painted jean jackets,
Oh,
or
yeah.
she kind of like decorated them, but I think it would be cool to paint them. I think that would be so fun. Or even like purses. Like there are tons of leather accessories
Sure.
out there that I could use these same paints for, like purses, or I've even seen like these purses that are made out of basketballs.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if Michael, you've seen those, or if anyone else has, but I think those are so fun. And I'm almost positive I'd be able to use these same paints on them and use my same techniques. So that would be cool. And in the basketball world, I feel like that would, I hope that would be, a good or a popular accessory that people could commission me to do.
Now, another question that came in, how much of your time, what's the balance of your time now? Is it primarily towards custom shoes? Are you still working in other art forms? And what balance would you like?
Well, I would say right now it's mostly commissions, especially because it's Christmas time. That is
Sure.
the busiest time of the year. In the almost 2 years I've had my business, both Decembers that I've worked in have been very busy. People love their like custom shoes for for Christmas gifts, and I do too. I mean, I think it's a great gift, and I'm excited to, kind of be in the middle of that right now. Wrapping a few up, because one of the harder parts about what I do is leaving enough time for shipping and packaging, and
Sure.
that is honestly my least favorite part of what I do. Maybe at some point I will maybe have someone help me with that, because the artist in me just wants to paint all the time and not have to deal with the shipping stuff. But yeah, so all that to say, I have to kind of plan out my time a little bit, and make sure that I leave enough room, especially around Christmas time, to get those commissions out to people. And then, yeah, so mostly commissions now. And then I actually recently completed a watercolor painting that was commissioned.
Wonderful.
So I still would love to continue doing that 2D art, because that was my first love. Shoes came most recently. I love doing shoes, but I know I'll always go back to like that classic acrylic painting on canvas, the watercolor on paper. So I want to try to incorporate more of that. I'm very busy with shoe commissions right now, which is so fun. But at some point, I would love to go back to doing that acrylic and watercolor. And I try to keep a balance, just to make sure I'm not, getting burnt out or too tired from what I do, because I always want to enjoy what I do. That's the main thing. And I'll keep doing shoes as long as I enjoy it, and I love it. So yeah.
Now, were you just working with a pencil?
I will say I was going to add that I am using a pencil. It doesn't show up super well, actually, when I kind of shine the light on it. It does, but I think that's for the best, because when you're using a pencil while painting, you don't want it to show up in the end.
Sure.
So what I've done is I just did like a light sketch basically of the saber that I'm going to paint on this swoosh.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
This is what it's going to look like completed, or
Look at
hopefully.
that. Brilliant.
So right now I'm mixing silver and white paint to get almost like a light gray. The white kind of makes it less shimmery, but I love that Angelus makes all of these metallic paints too. So I love adding, I have gold and I have, well, this color is called pewter, or like a darker silver almost. So I love using those just to add some highlights and dimension to what I'm painting.
Have customers shared with you, do they primarily wear your shoes, play in your shoes, display your shoes?
Most of my customers wear their shoes from what I hear, which
Okay.
is awesome. And
Yeah.
I have had a few customers who have said, well, these are, I can't touch these. So they just put them on the shelf and
Yeah.
look at them, which
Well,
I
they're
think
so
is
beautiful.
totally fine. I think that's great too. So I believe that most of my customers actually do wear their shoes. I have my own pair of customs. That was, I believe, the second pair that I did. That I wear all the time. I've had to touch them up a couple times because at the beginning of my process, I wasn't great about putting the top coats on. Now I do multiple layers of top coat, and that has really improved the durability of the shoes. So because I put a top coat on, it's waterproof and not always scratch proof. I mean, obviously you want to be careful when you're wearing your shoes. You don't want to like trek through the mud or bang them against a rock or something, but overall they're pretty durable. So
No, I love that. And I'll be honest, I mean, I'd want to wear them, right? Show them off.
yeah. So
So this is painting the saber, is that right?
Yes, just doing the first layer. I'll bring it closer to the camera so you can see the detail. Now, because it's just the first layer, I haven't been able to get as much of like these crisp lines.
I see.
You might even still be able to see the blue shining through a bit, but it's all part of the process. So once this dries, which will take a couple minutes, I don't think I'll go back to it for this demonstration, but once that dries, I'll add the second and then the third layer. So most often I do 3 layers of paint for everything. Some colors take a little bit longer, or so some colors take more layers, I would say, because they're thinner, like, and lighter too. Like the white is pretty thin, and it's also a very light color, obviously. So I have to go back in sometimes like 4 or 5 layers with the white. But
wow.
Yeah. So now I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm almost done with the demonstration. I'll go ahead and start freestyling, kind of like this abstract design. I'm showing it upside down now.
Yeah, that is so amazing.
It's not going to be exactly like this design, but a similar style. So I'll probably do, I think what I'm going to try to do is maybe like a rotunda.
Oh, wow.
I have painted a lot of rotundas on shoes, and I think that's great. It'll be a little abstract, little gray.
And so this is where you can go right in with so you don't even need the pencil here, huh? You can just freestyle a bit.
I'm gonna freestyle it for this.
Love it.
Particular section. I don't always use the pencil, and it really doesn't matter what pencil you use. I wanted to mention that. I just use, I think this is a Prismacolor brand, like HB pencil, which is like right in the middle of hardness, I would say. I think like 2B or like 3B is, I think that would be too maybe soft for when I'm wanting. So use an HB right in the middle, and it works out pretty well for the shoes. So yeah, what I'm doing.
And someone else asked, do you use any additional elements for final little touches, like, a Sharpie or something else like that? Or is it all paint?
It's all paint. I want to make sure I'm using durable materials. I'm honestly not sure how durable the Sharpie would be. It might fade over time, but I know that this paint works really well. So I think I've tried like a black pen to get like these really fine details on like a portrait. And then I ended up, so I tried putting the top coat over top of it and it just kind of bled all over the place. So I had to go
I
back
see.
in with the black. I ended up using black paint anyways. And doing that. So that was an interesting little experiment that I did. So I'm just adding the dome on top of the rotunda. And I'm going to do these funky little
Yeah, so we had another question, and this is actually perfect based on where you're coming up on the demonstration, a little more about the top coat. What, how does that part work? Does that really make it waterproof? What is that,
Yeah, it does. Now I'm not going to say that it completely protects the shoes. It depends on how you're treating them. I always tell my customers, like, or if they ask like how they should wear their shoes or treat them or whatever, I just say, like, I mean, you want to be careful with them, not, and they will, as with anything, like it wears down over time, but the top coat does a very good job of making the design long lasting. It's not perfect, but it will do its job for the most part.
And you said you apply a couple, is that true?
What'd you say? Sorry.
Yeah, just sorry. You said you apply a couple top coats, is that right?
Yes, two top coats is what I do. And I will say throughout this whole process, I think every artist and every shoe artist does this differently. I know some artists just do one top coat, or they'll do the whole process completely differently. This is just what I've found works best for me.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this part. So I'll kind of give a glimpse into this section.
Oh, that's incredible.
There's a little bit of a shimmer, and it doesn't show up as well as it will once I add the second and the third coats, but that's kind of what it looks like to freestyle in that top section right there. So
amazing.
I think my plan for the rest of the side is to add a couple more UVA elements. I'll probably do like maybe the mini sabers over here or something, and the classic V logo, or maybe I'll do like a wahoo wah. I do a lot of script on shoes too, which I think is so fun. I used to be really into like handwriting or like
so fun
stuff like that. So I've kind of transferred that over into my shoes. So now I'll show the top coat process. I forgot to mention that because the paints are water-based, I have like a cup of water. I'm not showing it, but that's how I clean my brushes. Just
okay, great. Yes. Good point. Very good point.
Towel. I keep it simple. So I'm not just letting all the collect on the brushes. In between colors, I will wash the brushes. So this is what I use for the top coat. This will give it, there are different levels of shine that you can use. It looks white. I actually just have a little bit left, and you can see I haven't kept my studio clean. Like paint gets literally everywhere. But it will dry, it goes on like translucent and it will dry clear. So this actually takes a fair amount of time to dry, more so than the paint. So I want to make sure I also leave myself enough time for that. So I'm going to grab a different brush, still the Winsor & Newton brand. You can, again, use any brush for this. And I'm just going to go ahead. Sometimes I pour this into a smaller container, like a really small bowl, and I'll use that. But in this case, I'm just going to dip the brush in it. And I'll go ahead and just go right over top of this. And it actually, in this case, it's going on pretty clear. You might be able to see a bit of the translucence, but I think for the most part.
So you would apply this, let it dry, and then apply again?
Yes. So once it dries, usually wait like a half an hour, and then I'll put the next coat on. And then once that dries, I will lace up the shoes, and then they are ready to ship to the customer or deliver for delivering. But I have a lot of East Coast customers, so more often than not, I ship the shoes, at least where I am right now. I'm in LA. I don't know if I mentioned that. And so I'll go ahead. Now this blue paint is tricky. I'm not sure why, but sometimes when I put the top coat on, it kind of bleeds a little bit and turns the top coat like a light blue. But before it dries, I just make sure to go back over it and distribute that. And I'll have to clean my brush a little bit and make sure that that blue is not bleeding into the rest of the design.
And Lindsay, do you top coat what you've painted and any area you haven't painted, or only what you painted?
Only what I painted.
Okay.
Or only what I used the nail polish remover on.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Because I'm basically just putting back on the top coat that was already on the shoes that protects them.
I see.
So I've removed it, I paint, and then reapply the top coat. So, and I also make sure I didn't even mention, so this section of the shoes, I haven't painted yet. But what I'll do here is this is where I use that fabric mixture that I talked about with the 2 soft. So I use that threads right here. If this part is to be painted as part of the design, I'll use the regular acrylic paint back here, and same here too. This is the rubber material, but the acrylic paint still works on it. So I'll do that and then add, I actually add 3 or 4 layers to this because this tends to chip or fade more easily than the rest of the shoe because there's not that leather for the paint to soak into. So
you just might know there's a couple folks who have put in the chat that they think your work is so beautiful and they're really grateful for this. It really is. I mean, did you ever anticipate, I think I know the answer to this, but that this would be part of your art? It's so unique.
No, I did not. This came all of a sudden when I just decided to try it out back in September of 2021, right after I started my business. And it ended up becoming a bigger part of my business today than I anticipated. And also, I think custom shoes in general have become more popular over the past year or so, is what I've noticed, especially out in Los Angeles. So that's been fun to kind of do the work with the trends, I guess you could say. So
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not expect that to happen. I wasn't sure. I didn't think anyone would want custom shoes except for maybe like my close friends and family, and turns out like lots of people want them. So I think that's great.
It's totally great. It's very exciting, and everyone, we'll have a time to share Lindsay's info with the information as well, so that everyone here can know it and pass it along as well.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm just about done with the demonstration. This coat is still drying right here. But when this is done, I'll, like I said, add that second coat on and then lace the shoes up. Here's the final look. So as you can see, it gives like when it dries, it won't be quite as glossy, but it does definitely give a gloss to the shoe.
Absolutely.
Nice. And there's also a matte option too. I have this matte acrylic finisher, same brand that I use. This I mainly use for fabric shoes. I forgot to mention that I've worked with Converse too. So if people wanted like custom Vans or like canvas shoes or of the Converse or Vans variety, then I'm definitely down to do that. I'll just use that fabric mixture.
Oh, fantastic. And we also had a question. How long does it take if someone were to commission a pair of shoes today or tomorrow? What's your timeline?
Oh, well, I am currently booked with shoe commissions through the summer. That will
through the summer. Oh, wow.
Yeah, through the summer. So I will be busy doing that. And I've decided that after that, I'd like to try to incorporate more of those watercolor and acrylic on canvas paintings that I talked about, just to kind of have that balance so I don't get completely burnt out by what I do.
Sure.
Like I said, I still want to enjoy what I do. So what I'm telling people now is that, yes, I'm booked through the summer, but I still have room for a couple more commissions. So yeah, that I think will allow me to be flexible because I also, like I said, move around a lot. I'm not 100% sure where I'll be by the end, even the end of the summer next year. So I want to keep my options open. So
sure, absolutely.
I want to make sure I don't overbook myself or overwork myself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Look at this beautiful artwork. That's incredible.
Each side. So I will
absolutely incredible.
Try to finish these up somewhat soon. Like I said, I'm pretty busy with Christmas commissions, but when I finish that up, I'll get these completed, and then I will try to sell these as like a non-commissioned pair of shoes, which I've never done before, but we're going to see. I might add them
We're
to my
gonna
website.
It might be someone on this program. We don't know. So.
Yeah, it could be. They're men's size 11. So we will see.
Oh, that is a good thing to know.
Yeah, I was going to say they won't fit everyone, but
yeah. Well, here, Lindsay,
Um,
can we toggle back over before we wrap up?
Sure. I'll go ahead and stop this video, and then I will start back up the other one.
Wonderful. Lindsay, thank you. This has been a total delight. It's so fascinating to see your process and to learn about your motivations behind your art and how you approach this really unique thing that you're doing. And it sounds like it's going well and it's bringing you joy. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Good.
I love it. I'm learning something new every day, which keeps it fun and interesting.
Well, that's fantastic. So yet another totally fascinating alumni story in behind the scenes. Lindsay, thanks for all your time and effort tonight. We're totally delighted to share this with you. Thanks to everyone who attended. We hope that you learned about Lindsay's art, about her process. You can see some ways that you can connect with her there to learn more. I want to also thank my colleague Robin Stafford for organizing this and all of our behind the scenes programs, and Patrick Stanley, who has been our behind the scenes of the behind the scenes. Thank you, Patrick. And please do take an opportunity to connect with Lindsay via these channels, or also to connect with UVA, watch for more virtual programs from the Office of Engagement, or connect with your local UVA club in the UVA Clubs Global Network. We love to bring the Wahoo community together in whatever way we can. So Lindsay, thank you again. And everyone, thanks for joining. Have a great night. Go Who's.
Yeah, thanks everyone.